Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good to know, man. All right. So I'm already recording, so we can go ahead and get started if you like.
Fantastic.
All right. So I'm gonna give you the floor. You introduce yourself and what you do.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm a cardiologist. I've been a cardiologist for over 4 decades. Also, a lifestyle medicine physician, meaning that I work with individuals to improve their health through lifestyle factors, exercise, resistance training, even in terms of your diet, in terms of sleep, in terms of your mindsets and things like that. I've been involved in academic medicine for this whole period of time, written many medical papers, do research,
Mhm.
educate medical residents and fellows, and I've had a lot of administrative responsibilities. So I've had different parts to my career.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I saw also was how you help those, I think it was like male loneliness.
Yes,
And that to me is big because of not only the population and male loneliness, but at the same time, it's also big because of how many men suffer in
uh-huh.
male loneliness. So, the one thing I wanted to ask you about that. So, when they hear loneliness, they may think it's only like emotional. What is actually happening inside the body?
Well, that's a great question. You see, because there's the cognitive part, right? How we feel.
Yeah.
Uh, you might feel lonely. There's an emotional aspect to it. It's a painful feeling. There is
Yeah.
perhaps a feeling of some stress. This doesn't feel right to me, or you don't feel as secure because connections give us a sense of security, right? A sense of feedback. I know I have someone to support. Also, it could be a lack of meaning. I think part of the human experience is how we impact other people and how they impact us and taking on goals that will help humanity. So the determinants of how a given person may react to loneliness is
Mhm.
it's very varied. There's a flip side to this because we know that there's people who are extroverts and introverts, and some do very well with just having one good friend, and some people can handle being alone and not feel lonely, and other people can be in a crowd and feel lonely. So it's really how you are perceiving your environment and being honest with yourself about it. And if you do feel lonely, then taking the steps to correct that.
So, why can't chronic isolation become a heart health issue?
It becomes a hard issue because of a number of factors. One of the big factors, and this is true, by the way, of all the different psychological factors that
Yeah.
affect someone, that we're in the negative aspect of them, it affects our very health proactivity. We don't pursue health as high, as hard. People's exercise habits are poor, the diets are poor, the sleep is not as good. This is true with people who are lonely, people who are very pessimistic, people who feel very bored in life, people who feel anxious or depressed. It's just empiric data that these people have poor health habits. And I think that's a big part of it. But on the other hand, there is this other component, whether it's a stress response or just feeling emotionally of a lack, where you can have increase in stress hormones, cortisol, and you can have insulin resistance and inflammation in the body, and these things can affect you biologically. The data is quite clear that people who have a chronic sense of loneliness have about a 40% increase in the risk of heart disease and even all-cause mortality and other chronic diseases. So it works through both through a biological mechanism and through poor health habits.
And it's amazing because so many men, they like isolate when it comes to being stressed and depressed and overwhelmed. So why do you think that is? Why do men do that?
Well, I think there's an aspect of men and women, right? I mean, they do have different ways in which they deal with loneliness. I think women are much
Yeah.
more likely to reach out to a friend and so forth. I think part of it is just we get so busy with whatever we're doing. And even though there's this basic psychological need to feel connected to other people, it's a need that can be
Hmm.
sublimated easily. In other words, because we compete with other needs. I'm very busy in my job or in my career or pursuing fame or whatever it is. And you can actually sublimate that, what is a basic psychological need, because you're feeding these other needs you have. And then, time goes by and friendships atrophy. And all of a sudden, you don't have on your bookshelf that you can pull off that friendship that you want when you need it. So I think that's a big part of it.
Because it's like me, I don't want to say I like being lonely, but I love being alone. Right. I just enjoy being alone. Like I can, go to work and interact with people and I come home and that's my, I like to call safe space. It's my safe space to actually, you know, enjoy the quiet, you know, do what I want to do what I need to do, and things like that. I enjoy doing that. But you have other men, that's not so the case. It's not the case at all. Like some of them have to go to work to be able to, enjoy the interactions you know, of not being lonely. So like what I really like to ask you in that point, what do you think can really hurt men in that run, that even because they enjoy going to work and they have this interaction and come home, what do you think are the repercussions for them to actually um to deal with that? What do you think of the repercussions for that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think just what you just said is a great example. You come home, you know yourself, and
Hmm.
you find it a safe space. It's your
Hmm.
downtime. It's your regeneration space, if you will.
Oh
So
yeah.
you know yourself, and
Hmm.
you're okay being alone. So a person has to know themselves. There are people just like you, many people like you, who feel great being alone and want that space and don't need as much interaction. There's people at the completely opposite end of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And when
Hmm.
you are ignoring your needs, then
Yeah.
it builds up in you. So you have to create a minimum standard. If you're a person who's at the other end of the spectrum and you feel like this becomes a toxic thing for you when you feel lonely or you don't have friends around you and you need to get to work and so forth, be real with it and say, okay,
Hmm.
I got these other things on my plate, but this is something, just like someone may need enough sleep or, people
Hmm.
may need to eat a certain way. I need to maintain certain friendships. And then if maybe you don't have those friends, and then you got to reach out, and see what's going on in your community, and look at different ways that you can create friendships. It's like anything else in life. You have to say, wait, what's missing, and what's that first step I can take to improve that?
And you know what? Now, since you said that, there's like a different aspect of that too. Well, I just mentioned I love being alone, like in that case. But then when you have other men, they really look forward to going to work because interactions and stuff like that. So my next part to that is that there's also men that can still go to work or hang out with family, friends, and stuff like that. So with that, when men can go and go to work and hang out with family, friends, etc., can they still feel that loneliness? Can they still feel alone? Rather, they're hanging out with friends and families and going to work.
Yes, it's very possible. As we say, you can
Hmm.
be lonely in a crowd. So it's really about how that friendship or that thing builds you. So you have to look at the quality of relationship. You may have friends that are companions, but are they friends that are confidants? Are they friends that you can share your emotions with, your vulnerabilities with? Are they there for you at a moment of need, when
Mhm.
you feel overwhelmed by your job or, by a relationship or by a health issue you're dealing with? So it's really not just about the friendships you have, but the quality of your relationships as well. So one great friend can often be worth 100 acquaintances, right?
For sure. For sure. So what do you so in your opinion, what do you think are the warning signs that isolation is beginning to affect someone's health in their daily life or their daily life?
I think the warning signs are, it can vary, I would say, from a person to person. The emotional aspect of it, that sense of
Mm,
feeling lonely, feeling, bereft, feeling I don't have a companion. I don't have someone to share with things with. It could be a sense of loss of meaning. It could be somatic. You could have arm pain. You could have neck pain. You can have tension anywhere in your body. That's a somatic aspect of stress sometimes. So it can be
mhm.
highly varied in different people. I think people know when they feel lonely. It's very often just a question of how do I deal with it.
So, as true as that can be, like most men can actually mistaken that for tension pain and stuff like that. They could actually mistaken that for something else and not even realize that it could be that warning sign of loneliness.
Right.
They can absolutely miss it. And I think I've had several friends that has experienced that before. They'll they'll mention, hey, I've been, dealing with some tension and, in different parts of their bodies, or they'll talk about different certain pain elsewhere.
Right.
And they actually didn't even realize that it was a pure sign of loneliness. And my thing is, well, my question to you to that is, how can they extinguish the difference between having the pain from signs of loneliness to pain for something else? Like, how can they distinguish that? Just in your opinion, you may not know, but if you have an opinion, like, yeah, that can help too.
Yeah. Well, your question is interesting because when you feel lonely, you may be feeling other aspects of things in your life. It feels like
Yeah.
a sense of a loss of a sense of meaning.
Hmm.
It could be that you're not being able to be expressed in certain aspects in terms of your sense of purpose. I would say that paradoxically, perhaps one of the ways to deal with that kind of situation and that loneliness is maybe not to focus on it so much. In other words,
Right.
right? And part of that may be, hey, what can I do in terms of that? And we can throw out different ideas. But part of it is to plug into something else which actually energizes you. Do you have a sense of meaning and purpose? Do you have a job that you're enjoying? So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect, and you see this, at least in my career over the course of many years, people who plugged into, for example, exercise. We said, you know
Yeah.
what? They went through a divorce, so they went through something, and then 6 months later, they're running a marathon. Why are they doing that? Because they intrinsically knew in their head, I gotta find some sense of purpose in my life. And when you do that, you actually can create the opposite of what we're kind of talking about. When people feel lonely, often they get into a vicious cycle where their health
Yeah.
habits go bad, and then they're not feeling as well, and then they get more contracted. They're not going out as much. But you can get into the opposite, which is a virtuous cycle. You say, hey, I feel lonely now, but okay, I'm lonely, but what else can I do in my life to make my life more energetic? Can maybe there's something in terms of my job, or maybe I need to upgrade in terms of my job situation, or maybe I always wanted to write. Maybe I'll start doing that. Paint or do something in the community or volunteer or things like that. So that's a very good way to start.
Now, although like even though that I enjoy, you know, being alone, I had to actually literally get into those steps of, exercising again and actually find the ways to better myself because of different things I was dealing with back in the day. And it wasn't even so much of being alone or suffer from loneliness. Yeah, now I will admit I did like at one point suffer through, being lonely. I did. But I ended up learning in the process that I literally enjoyed it. I enjoyed just like being alone. And being alone and being lonely are like two different things. There are two different, just in my opinion, there are two different things.
100%.
Yeah, they're two different things. And when when I realized that, that's when I was like, okay, if I know that I'm not suffering from that, I literally need to find a purpose. And that's what I ended up focusing more on. And that would prove your point and what you was talking about, that the difference between the signs of, the tension and the pain from actually suffer from loneliness to being pain from something else besides, loneliness. And I started to distinguish that. And that's when I had to, literally start thinking of a purpose for my life. I had to literally, you know, find a way to realize that, yeah, this life is not for me. And I had to, get back into the, exercising. I've always loved exercising, but when you're suffering through depression and anxiety and stuff like that, it can really drain you and really take you away from actually what you enjoy. Not only
Right.
besides, um, like off to the side, like domestic violence and stuff like that, or being abused or whatever, that'll literally take you away from the fun aspects of your life. And um, when I got back to actually exercising and everything, that brought back the joy for me. You know, I could go into a loud gym and, get a workout in and enjoy it, and then be able to get in the car, come home and enjoy the quiet because of, you know, where I am. Like I enjoy being alone. I enjoy, just the peace. I've said this before, and I kind of think that at the same time, most men will really have mixed feelings between both, right? They'll have mixed feelings between both of, you know, still trying to go out there and live their life and try to enjoy it in every aspect. But then, they come home and or they'll do whatever and they still feel empty. They will still feel 100% empty. And it's like, what's the solemn purpose? Like, what am I doing here? Like some men just really just can't seem to grasp and understand that. And it's not their fault, but it's like, why? Why is it that I can go there, I can go there, I can go everywhere in the world, but still feel empty, lonely, Why do you think that is, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, you just said some profound things here, and
Mhm.
I'll answer your question, but I want to elaborate on what you said because you were saying you were feeling only, and you hit on what I would say is the prime two targets for dealing with it. Actually, very
Mm,
often we have to attack something sideways, and what you did,
yeah.
what you expressed, is one, you looked for a sense of purpose. Um,
Hmm.
you started to pursue that. And
Hmm.
the reason that works is, and this is the answer to your question, is that as
Okay.
profound as our need for being connected to other people, the greatest need a person has is a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose. I mean, people will, as much as they love their family and their children, they'll go out and fight in a war, right? If they feel that it's a righteous war, because the cause becomes more important than even your family. So that sense of purpose is our greatest single need. So what happens is that when you fill up that sense of purpose, you create a sense of vitality. This is an inner pleasurable sense of feeling energetic and alive. As you
Yeah.
do that, you build yourself. First of all, you're meeting a more profound need, but that brings us a side benefit. You have more to bring to the plate in relationships. Your confidence goes up and things like that. So that's one of the two big limbs that you mentioned. The other was exercise.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, when people ask me, uh, I'm a cardiologist, right? But I say we have the
Yeah.
best psychological tool in our toolbox, which is getting people to exercise. Exercise
Yeah.
is the master behavior of all other behaviors. When we're built as human beings to be in movement. Actually, depression on a biological basis is something about lack of movement. My life is I'm not moving, I'm not going forward, and we're not meeting that need to be in movement, which is a sense of purpose. But there's also a physical aspect of this. When people exercise, it's not just physical, it's almost spiritual. So the data,
Yeah.
it proves the point. There's a guy at Duke, his name is James Blumenthal,
Okay.
and Duke University, and he was the head of their cardiac rehab program, or the behavioral aspect of it for many years. And he did three randomized controlled studies sponsored by the NIH. So this is like the highest level of medical research where you can randomize people randomly to A or
Hmm.
B. And they were randomized to either these were people who had depression, and they were randomized to either an antidepressant medication or to exercise. And lo and
Yeah.
behold, at the end of the trial, there was a comparable reduction in depression, both with exercise and antidepressant medication. And this has now been shown in many studies. Also,
Hmm.
with resistance training, also tremendous psychological benefit. So when we're
Hmm.
engaged physically, it starts to make us feel better. And by the
Hmm.
way, a gym's a great place to go when you're lonely, right? Because even if you are feeling lonely, you're among other people, and you're doing
Yes.
something that they're doing. And if you keep going,
Hmm.
you're going to feel I'm connected to this place. And more likely, after a period of time, there is a person you'll say hello to, and one thing leads to the next.
And that's to me like I've always enjoyed going to the gym. Like even though that I'm more of a homebody, I
Yeah,
still don't mind going to the gym. I'll,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, get those little workouts in and enjoy it.
yeah.
And like, even though I still got some home gym equipment I use here, and I'll use it too. So either way, as long as I'm doing the workouts that I love, so be it. That's how I am. Like I have to get that, get that workout in. But when I was depressed and feeling, a different way, anxiety and stuff like that, the gym wasn't always my forefront. The workouts wasn't always top priority for me. And I kind of wish I knew that back then, that if I would have actually taken the gym a little bit more seriously than I do now, then I think something would have changed within me wholly, entirely differently. and not, suffer through a lot of the things that I've, went through, especially for self-image and, you know, your self-feeling, right? Where you can actually look at yourself in the mirror in the morning and, be like, hi, you like, hi, keep moving. You want to be able to feel that stuff saying, man, I feel awful. I don't look good. And
Yeah.
just want to be able to, you just want to be able to feel happy. And like most of the men that I bring on here, they have suffered a lot of, depression, PTSD, because they've been in the war and stuff like that. And there was times they wasn't feeling very, good about themselves. And I can understand that because of, you know, so many different aspects of what they went through the war and what they went through personally after the war, the traumatic events that they replaying in their minds and stuff like that. It can be hard for, men to actually make that transformation to actually be able to come home and, be able to live their life again because of what they experienced.
Right.
And it could be a scary thing. But I want to ask you, give me a realistic first step. In your opinion, a realistic first step for a man who has withdrawn and does not know how to reconnect.
Right. There's no one answer to the question, but
Mhm.
uh, one of the things that we need to do here is what we would call a little bit of cognitive override.
Mhm.
Let me give you this point, and really based on what you said. You
Mhm.
mentioned that, you wished at the time when you were expressing that you were feeling a bit down and depressed,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
you wish you had known about maybe the value of going to the gym, and maybe you would have given it more of a shot at that time. The
Yeah.
fact of the matter is when we're down and depressed, our body is screaming, I don't have the energy to do things. You know,
Correct.
I just don't feel there. And
Mhm.
so the body is saying, the mind is saying that. It's really not the body, it's more the mind. Because
Mhm.
I've never, and I wonder if you have ever felt a time when you went to the gym and you couldn't take that first step. You didn't have the fatigue at a level you couldn't do that. So this is something that's called cognitive override. And I'll give you an example from my own life. Um,
Mhm.
uh, so there was a time when, I was working crazy work hours, and I was, early in my marriage, and I had small kids. So there was a reason to get
Yeah.
home immediately after work. But the
Yeah.
work hours were quite long. I mean, I was at least at the hospital till about 7 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
So I decided to do what's called an implementation intention. An implementation intention is actually a very powerful technique where you say, I'm taking something out of my mind. It doesn't matter what my mind says to me. I'm going to intentionally say, when it's X, I will do Y. X is a cue in time or space or situation. And when it's X, I will do Y. Y is the behavior. So the behavior was I wanted to go to the gym and exercise. X was,
Sure.
what was X going to be? I said, my X, the cue is when I leave work, that's my cue. I will go to the gym, no matter how hungry I am, no matter how late it is, and so forth. And for the next 2 years, there were times I was getting home, leaving work at 8 o'clock, and I was hungry. And I still go to the gym first before I got home. And maybe I was seeing the kids less. But you know what? I started to exercise quite regularly. So what I was doing there was I was saying, I'm not accepting what my mind is telling me. I'm going to do this even if I don't feel like doing it. And then you have that breakthrough. That's a breakthrough. So that's a way to deal with this. Now, that it doesn't necessarily have to be exercise. It could be something you do in the community, or maybe a volunteer thing you decided to do on Sundays. And then Sunday comes and you say, oh, I'm so down and out. I really don't feel well. I don't want to do this, but you do it anyway. It's that
Mhm.
consistency. In life,
Yeah.
consistency is the secret sauce of success.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yes. I agree 100%. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, we're on the same wavelength.
And that's the thing because like I said, I wish I would have knew that too. Like
Yeah,
when I started learning that consistency is everything. Like because I've always felt like that I needed the motivation. But the problem with that was that motivation is only a booster. It's not going to help you with consistency. If you go and you do your daily workouts or whatever, that's where your mind will start to see that the consistency is paying off. And that could give you the motivation to actually go and keep continuing to be consistent, but never being reliant to motivation. But
yeah,
that's how I've always started to look at it now,
right,
because I've always would sit here like I'll um get up in the morning and I'll like, okay, let me see if I can scroll on YouTube, see if I can find some motivation videos to, get me through my day. And
right.
I'll go and I'll watch some motivational videos, and in the process, I'm like, okay, this is not really helping me, but okay, let's just go ahead and continue through the day and let's see what happens.
Yes,
And that's when I had wished, like I said, wish I knew back in the day that consistency was more than everything, because the main thing that, most people would do on a consistent basis is go to work.
right,
You go to work, you work 5 days a week, 6 days a week, right?
right,
And when when your mind is seeing that, your mind is also telling you, okay, this is a problem because I don't want to work. I don't want to keep getting up, go to work every day. This is how I was feeling. I don't want to keep getting up to go to work every day. But that is the consistent part of your daily life. And if more people actually looked at going to work and using the gym as that type of added consistency, it may help. Some it may not. Some may. But if you use that, that could help you. Like it could really get you through the day. It would, maybe not. Right? And
right, right, right.
and that's where, most people would shut down. They'll shut down because they rely too much on using motivation to get up instead of using their minds to actually use the consistency behind what they do. And I wish I knew that, because, like I said, going to the gym has, it always have made a big difference for me, because I could go to the gym and sometimes I won't even finish my workouts 100%. But then my mind would tell me, hey, you got those workouts in. You got it in. You went in, you did something. You may not have finished, but you did it,
Yeah,
right? You did it. So
listen,
as long as you got up out of bed, went to the gym, got it in, you ain't got to finish it all. You did what you had to do. Then maybe the next day, you can finish majority of what you did. You can. And then everybody's going to have an off day. Everybody. Everybody's going to have that off day.
yeah,
And most of the time, most people start feeling good about themselves because they actually went in and they got what they did. There's a little guilt that'll come in that if they didn't finish it, they'll feel a little bit of guilt. But yeah, that's where motivation can help you a little bit. But it's not all the way there. You just continue to be inconsistent,
right,
because they look back on it, they feel what you do, and keep doing those. Keep doing that. Just keep doing it. And that's where your consistency come in. It's not about, you know, shutting down and then you don't know what to do after that. It's more about getting up and moving forward and keep being consistent at what you do. And when you talked about, yourself, you talked about yourself and how you work those, crazy hours. I wanted to ask you, when you do that, even though it could be like something that you love and enjoy doing, at the end of the day, how would that make you feel? How does it make you feel that you put in those hours, then you could go to the gym and then you could spend time with your kids? How did that make you feel? Did it make you feel like you was accomplished? Did it make you feel drained? How did that make you feel?
It made me feel great. I can't remember a time that I went to the gym and said afterwards, gee, I wish I hadn't gone to the gym. And I bet that's true
Yeah,
for you too. And just about
yeah,
the real problem is just getting people there in the first place.
yeah,
But
for sure.
so I felt very good about that. It was very energizing. And what happens is within minutes of starting exercise, that fatigue goes away because it's
Yeah,
mental.
absolutely.
Mental. It's
Yeah.
primarily
Hmm.
mental. I mean, that's not to say you physically weren't tired. Might not be tired. You might be, but you're never tired to the point that you can't just move. But I'm struck by what you were saying, and I guess one of the things that people may hear because they might hear it inspirationally, but they may have had the experience in life of having tried, and we all fall down. We all fall
Yeah.
down. So,
Mhm.
part of this consistency is I think that sometimes we're a little impatient to see some result, and the antidote to that is where you're setting your goal.
Mhm.
Much more important to set a very low goal than something that's more ambitious, and ensuring that consistency. One of the remarkable things that we've learned in behavioral science, and in medicine and even exercise science, we used to tell
Mhm.
people that, gee, and still the recommendations are that people get like 30 minutes of, a brisk walk, aerobic exercise, 5 times a week, 30 minutes, 150 minutes per week. Or you could do it very vigorously and cut that down in half. But
Yeah.
there's data that came out from, it's called the UK Biobank. It's a very large study of individuals that were followed over time. And they took over 70,000 people who were participants in this database, and they
Yeah.
slapped a wrist accelerometer on them. And then they wore it for a week. And then they followed them up for years. And what they did is they analyzed the data from this because it gives you accurate output in terms of, are you getting, bursts of physical activity? Is it 2 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Is it half an hour? And they isolated themselves to just people who were sedentary. And then they looked in these people who were sedentary and they looked how many bouts of, physical activity of 1 to 2 minutes were they getting. And that, by the way, that was 96% of all the physical activity these people were getting because they were sedentary. They weren't doing, structured exercise. And they found something remarkable, which was that the more you had of these short bouts of physical activity, there
Mhm.
was a decrease in cancer risk, in cardiovascular heart risk, and actually increased in longevity. And so, what this means, practically speaking, is gee, when I get 1 or 2 minutes of a bout of physical activity, that's promoting my health, actually biologically.
Yes.
So when you go to the store and you park further away, when you go to the work and you take the stairs instead of the escalator or the elevator, you're actually promoting your health actually biologically. But it's a great parallel to what's true in life. The most important is, can I get on the playing field? It doesn't matter how little it is, as long as I'm on the playing field. Because two things happen once you're on the playing field. One, if you stay on it, you've changed your identity. I'm no longer a sedentary person, i.e., you're not maybe doing a whole lot yet, but you're on the field. So that's a change in your identity. And then what happens? Life is non-linear. So what happens is one day you walk 10 minutes, another day you ran into a friend and walked 20 minutes, and all of a sudden you saw, hey, I can do more, and you start doing more. And that has been my experience over decades with patients. If I can get them on the playing field to do some physical activity, then it takes off. And so, and by the way, a very common reaction when I'm saying that to a patient, encourage exercise and say, well, what? And I'll say, well, can you give me 5 minutes of walking per day? It's What, doctor? I mean, that's ridiculous. Of course I could do that. And very often they don't do it because they didn't take it seriously. So you have to take that power of the first step seriously. You get on the playing field and you stick with it. And that is the secret sauce to get going.
Let me back up your point by that because that's a good point. I'm gonna back your point up on that.
Sure.
Just a quick story. Now I'm located in Indianapolis, Indiana. Okay. Now, me and my brother used to work together at this job at the Lucas Oil Stadium. That's where the Colts football team play. And we were private security worker for them. And we done it for 11 years. So there was one in particular year, I think it was, I want to say 2016 or 2017. I can't remember which year it was. And we both worked separate shifts. He had the first shift, I had the second shift. But then there was one in particular week, maybe a couple of weeks at that, that we had to end up working the same shift and it got stretched to 12 hours. And I had gained so much weight because the stadium is so big. It's so big that they had given, they'll give the team like segways and you can just use segway to get around, do your rounds and stuff like that. And that's what I was doing just to cut down not only on the time to do the rounds, but I don't like admitting this, but it's another lazier term to actually go and, you know, do it instead of walking. So one day when my brother was doing rounds, he had specifically lost so much weight and I had gained weight. And he called around then and I'm on the Segway. I'm just, doing nothing, just driving around on Segway.
Right,
And I see my brother walking because normally I was getting ready to give Segway to him so he could do the rounds, but he was walking.
right.
And I looked at him. I said, "Hey man, why don't you just get on the Segway and just, do your rounds there?" And he looked at me. He said, "Let me ask you a question. Would you rather spend an hour or 30 minutes to an hour walking, doing rounds, or would you cut that in half and not get any movies in doing your rounds on the Segway?" I sat there. So I turned around. I said, "Yeah, I guess you got a point." So I turned around. I put that Segway up. Ever since then, I had literally started walking. He used that playing field. If he couldn't get to the gym, he was going to find a way to get something in. Right? He's going to find a way, and he did it. And he literally will walk the whole entire stadium on one level, go up to the next level. He will not use the elevators. The escalators do not run on any type of event. So he'll take the stairs instead of the ramp. He'll take the stairs up and he'll do the next level rounds. Do the same. Go upstairs and do that in particular round. And he'll just use stairs. He avoided the elevators at all costs. And ever since I did that, that's how, I
Wow.
started promoting myself in the better way. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I followed behind in his footsteps and eventually started shedding some of that weight down. I figured because it was important that neither of us didn't have really the time to go to the gym. So, what not a good way to, like you say, get into a playing field. We got options. Use that advantage and go for it. And that's exactly
Yeah.
I ended up going behind him, following his footsteps, and that's how I just started walking everywhere too. Like the more that you do it, the better that you're actually promoting your body in a sense, heart health, like you said before. You're promoting so many different things in your body that it can be very well screaming, "Yay! You're actually doing something for me." So yes, I have to back your point up on that because that's very true. That's very true.
Your story is priceless. It is absolutely priceless. And it reminds me, the whole field of exercise science, how it got going was all the way back in 1953. I mean, people didn't really know so much about exercise and its importance back then.
Hmm.
Study came out, and it was a landmark study. What was it? A group of investigators in London studied they had these double-decker buses in
Yeah. Oh yeah. I
like,
remember.
and so they would be
Hmm.
the guy driving the bus, and the conductor would be going up and down the two flights to collect the tickets all day long. So they
Hmm.
studied these people over the course of a number of years. They just followed them up, and they found, lo
Yeah.
and behold, the guys who were the conductors were having half the incidence of heart disease compared to the people driving. Or put it the other way, the drivers had twice the incidence of heart disease. And that, obviously because the conductors were walking all day long, up and down the bus. That was the
Hmm.
beginning of the field of exercise science, exactly like the story with you and your brother, and it's
Hmm.
a inspiration to your audience that, hey, okay, so it really works.
It do. It worked like because I just found it. I found it phenomenal. Like I knew, and my body knew that I gotta respond in some way. And if I don't respond in the way that, you know, I need to respond, at least, like you said, just get into that playing field and just start somewhere. I knew like I couldn't be reliant and reliable on the Segway throughout my entire job of doing it. Because when it comes down to big events like, the football game and other big events, you can't use it. So you ain't got no choice but to walk. You can
Right,
use the escalators, but you can't use the Segway.
right,
So that's like, I mean, why not? Like, if he can actually do it, why can't I?
right,
And why can I not actually, you know, be set into being an example also to promote some, hey, let's just do some walking. Now, there were some others on the team that actually did not want nothing to do with the Segway. And I 100% respect that.
right,
100%.
right,
Like, they want no part of it. That's because, it was either, scared of it, intimidated by it, or they just want no part of it. They just rather walk. And that's to me, it's the best mindset because if you prefer walking, then yeah, you're not going to be, trying to shortcut, get lazy about doing your job.
right,
And then in some places there are no, access at all to using the Segway. And
right,
I'm sitting here like, okay, I think it's more important now that I actually start taking advantage of literally just doing some walking. Let's do some walking. And let's just see what happens. And I'd say something else too, because my brother also did this too. Like there's also times like during the summer, if there's like a lot of activity when he gets off work, he'll usually go to this little park place in Speedway, Indiana. He'll go and run there. But
right.
if it gets too late into the day to do it, he'll just actually get into his, running gear on and he'll go right upstairs at the top of the building and he'll just run. And he used to
Wow.
do 6 miles. He'll do 6 miles. This big
Six,
old building. Yeah, literally. Now
yeah,
I couldn't do that. Ain't no way I was doing that. Like walking is good enough for me. And he's walking and he's doing the running after he get up. Nah, I couldn't do it. Like I was already drained and tired. Like I was still heavy set and I'm still trying to find ways just to shed this weight. But
right,
what I did do though was when we went back to the 8 hour shift, I would actually go home and then I'll go outside and I'll just run maybe like 2 miles.
great.
And then, yeah, then after that, that'd have been it for me. And I did that like every other day. Like my legs was calling me at the end of the day. So it was like, yeah, I'll just probably train myself to do better. Just take it one step at a time. And then if I can do it, if my body calls for me to do it every day, yeah, I'm gonna listen. I'm just gonna do it every day. And then after that, and just keep doing it depending on how my body is. If I need to cut it short, I'll cut it short. And if I can do it longer, I'm gonna do it longer. If my body calls for something to do it, I'll do it. Like
Right.
That's what I wish I would have learned back then. I really wish I would have learned that, but I didn't. So that's why I'm taking advantage of it now, and I think it's important.
Hey, we all have things in our life we wish we'd known way back. Man, that's part of
Man,
human experience.
man, yes. Um, I got one last question for you.
Sure.
What is one thing every man could begin doing this week to protect both his mental and physical health?
Wow. Look, there's never one answer to that. I think
Sure.
we've already established that, if I had to tell someone to start someplace, it might be with exercise because it truly is one of these master behavioral keys, if you will. But
Yeah.
the there's a balance in life here, like how optimistic, and how much you believe in your future as opposed to being pessimistic. And
Yeah.
the data is clear that optimists, thrive better. They're more popular. They're more confident. They actually have less heart disease. They actually live longer. Pessimists, the opposite. But you can't tell somebody just think positively. Okay, it's just
Hmm.
we can't. But what happens is that you can create little optimism. In other words, the core of optimism is I believe I can handle what's on my plate. And if you put too much on your plate, then that's a problem. If so you have to say, I got to carve out something that I believe I can do. It's a goal, so it's a stretch goal, and I'm going to work at it and work at it, and you build that little optimism. I'm getting this thing done, and then you build from there. So wherever people are in their lives, one thing they can do is say, hey, how can I make my life 1% better? What is something that
Hmm.
carve out and do? And maybe it's in the exercise realm, or it could be lifting weights, or it could be something in terms of your diet, or it can be reaching out to create a better connection with a friend. It could be
Yeah.
beginning to do what you're doing. You're doing podcasts, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's any so everybody needs to look at, what's that thing that I'd regret if I'd never did it all, and say, what's one micro step I can do in that direction? And putting that on your plate and feeling good about it, that's a good place to start.
And that's good because to back up your point, like when I started doing this podcast, I was doing it every week, and that's where I stood at every week. That's it.
Okay.
I'll, do a recording. I think it was at the time, it was every Tuesday. I would do a recording and I'll have it out by that Sunday. But then as time progressed, I was like, okay. By the time I got to year four, that's when I was like, okay. I started getting drained from doing it. I just a little burnt out a little bit. Even though it was just a week and it was amazing because of all the prep time and everything else that you had to do behind it. And as I got into this year, I was like, okay, right now I'm at a point where I'm just going to do it whenever I feel like it.
Uh-huh.
Because I literally I would start, I would start my podcast, I think September or October of a year. So this year I was supposed to start it in October of 2025. And normally I go all the way through May of the next year, 2026. And I was like, I'll just do it when I'm getting ready. I literally did not start back up again for this year's podcast until January of this year.
Uh-huh.
And I just started doing it like, okay, I'm just going to do little sporadics and I'll just do it whenever I feel like it.
Right.
So January went by, hit February. I'm looking at my emails and I am looking at just different things. And I had seen from back in the past, I think it was like 2024, like there was just a small amount of people, not much, but small amount of people that, wanted to actually come on and, have the conversations about advocating for whatever they wanted to advocate on the mental health side. And those never went through. And that devastated me. at that point. But at the same time, I was relieved because I really wasn't trying to get out of that comfort zone. I wanted to
Right.
stay in my little comfort zone. So this year, when I was looking through my emails, I didn't see anything. But then I was like, okay, let me look through the spam. I hate looking through the spam because you don't know how trustworthy they can be, but I can understand why it's spam. So I went through the spam and I saw one person that reached out to me and wanted to have a conversation. This person was from Australia. Um, he was the owner of Breathwork and stuff like that. He's an author. And I looked at this email and I'm like, he wrote me that email. I want to say it was back in mid-January. I said, oh man, I missed out on this opportunity. But I was like, you know what? Let me go on and write him again and let me just see what happens. And so I wrote the email, sent it off. And he wrote me back the next day. I think maybe a couple of days later. And he wrote me back. I was like, oh, cool. We got, something going. And so we actually got to book an appointment to actually come on and have this conversation. And I'm feeling real nervous at this point. Like my heart is like beating, the lace is beating. So I did that. We had the conversation. I felt great. All right. Ever since then, I've been consistent. I've been very consistent about doing this podcast. I had done it five
Fantastic.
days a week. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
5 days a week. I did it ever since. I just kept doing it
Wow.
Monday through Friday. Just kept doing it just because of him. And he just came on last night. This was his third time coming on my podcast last night because of just how the connection is. And I just been consistent. I just did it. I was like, oh man, like this is why like we talked about the consistency. It's important. Rather
Right.
if you're going to the gym or rather if you're, doing something else, you just need to be consistent with it. And I had absolutely no type of consistency going into this. And I'm like, oh my goodness. But when my fellow Tim Thomas came on and we talked that very first time, he was my first guest, my very first guest. And I was not looking back ever since. And it's been great. Like because I finally got out of that comfort zone. I got out of the comfort zone to, connect and interact with people. I've interacted with so many people this year, it's not even funny.
Wow.
And I love every minute of it. I
Yeah.
love it. Like this has been the true calling. Like this is like what I enjoy doing. So like besides for me, actually going to work and stuff like that, I come home if I have someone coming on to do this, I'll do this. And hell, I'll just do a solo one by myself. I'll just get into this mic and talk. I did it for 3 years before I started this one. I'll keep on doing it. Like I have no problem in doing it. So like just continuing to be consistent, and I think that's important. That's why we have to, start thinking more consistently about things instead of trying to pump some motivation into you. Because if you keep pumping motivation into you, it'll get you somewhere, but not 100% there. So yeah, it's been wonderful just to come on, just to hear people talk about, so many different things. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
That's another great example. I think
Yeah.
people can take to heart, no question.
Yeah, and that's how that works, man. But Dr. Allen, man, I really appreciate you coming on, man, and having this conversation, sharing your little wisdoms with me, man. I appreciate you.
Well, I've appreciated this too. I think we've covered a lot of very important
Hmm.
subjects. I have on my website, by the way, for people who want, it's
Yeah, go ahead.
alanrozanski.com. A whole about 10 blogs on this whole social isolation thing that you were talking
Hmm.
about that would be helpful to people.
Hmm.
Also on my LinkedIn, I cover all these subjects as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check them out. Yeah, I gotta check that out because I've always would like read and learn things.
Sure.
So I got to do that. So yeah, I will check that out for sure.
Sure.
I appreciate you, Dr. Allen, man. I really do.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you, man.
day.
You
Okay.
too, man.
Bye bye.
Bye.